Hey everyone, welcome back to Top 10 Nerd for our second part of our Avengers Infinity War Easter egg list. The film is loaded with a ton of Easter eggs and references, and our part 1 really dived into the big ones that most of you comic fans may have picked up on while watching the film. This time around, some of the references are a little less well known, or they're lines that were borrowed from other classic films, so get ready to get your pop culture fix. And of course, this list has so many spoilers. You have been warned, friends. So with that in mind, let's jump into our picks for the top 10 Easter eggs you missed in Avengers Infinity War Part 2. Number 10, the Silver Surfer reference. The MCU has yet to grace us with the Silver Surfer's presence. Let's just pretend that Fox's Fantastic Four film never happened, please. But there is a reference to the character early on in Infinity War, after Thanos interrupts the Asgardian refugee ship's voyage to Earth. One certain hero manages to make it off the ship in time to warn us all of Thanos' approach, the Hulk. In a scene that references Silver Surfer's own Thanos warning in the comics, Banner crash lands into Doctor Strange's sanctum, muttering the words, "Thanos is coming," which matches up pretty closely with the comic panels. And at number 9, Ebony Maw and Doctor Strange. When the Infinity War trailer came out, many a fan of the comics noted that the shot of Doctor Strange being tortured by Ebony Maw looked a whole hell of a lot like the way that the scene goes down in the panels. The scene itself proved to be further inspired by the comic, despite using a bit of a different aesthetic, but Maw's methods are very much the same. But fun fact, unlike in the comics, Strange does not turn against the Avengers, and instead we get that scene we mentioned in our Part 1 list with Peter getting rid of Ebony Maw in a very alien-inspired moment. Up next, number 8, Grimace. Do you guys remember the cast of McDonald's characters that would grace your Happy Meals when there wasn't any other specific toy they were promoting? Aside from Ronald McDonald and the Hamburglar, there was one big purple pal who was featured often, Grimace, and Tony Stark sees a little bit of that character in Thanos when they first come face to face. Iron Man mocks the Mad Titan, quipping about how he and Grimace look alike, which is also an insult to his intelligence. Grimace was the slow, dense character of the group. Poor Grimace isn't the only character to get a mocking reference in the film though. When Ebony Maw arrives in New York and begins to give a big ol' speech, he's interrupted with, "Get lost, Squidward." Yeah, I see it. Up next, number 7, the Die Hard reference. Speaking of pop culture references, there's a moment in the film when Tony Stark sends Peter Parker away for his own safety, unwillingly inside of his Iron Spider suit. Peter definitely isn't down with this, and manages to accidentally activate another one of the suit's features, its parachute. This results in Peter gently floating back down to Earth, and quoting another famous parachute scene, Bruce Willis as John McClane in Die Hard, when he says, "Happy trails." In our number 6 spot, the Cauldron of the Cosmos. The dynamic between Tony Stark and Doctor Strange is a very enjoyable one. At first, the two don't really get along. Surprise, surprise there. And one of their first moments interacting together definitely doesn't help in that department. There's a scene where Tony stretches his legs and holds onto a particular artifact of Strange's, the Cauldron of the Cosmos, which is a pretty dangerous move, despite Stark having no clue what the object is. In the comics, the Cauldron is what Strange uses to look through time, space, and alternate realities, which he states that he can often sit in front of for hours and dwell upon the immutable mysteries of the universe. So yeah, kind of a big deal. Wouldn't really want to trash that. Up next, number 5, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. From one cool Doctor Strange adaptation to another, let's take a look at that move that he pulls against Thanos, the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. On Titan, the Avengers and the Guardians team up to remove the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos' hand. Now, in order to do so, Doctor Strange busts out a spell that you may recognize from the comics, called the Crimson Bands of Sidorak, that causes long, red, ribbon-like bands of energy to appear and bind an individual or object. The bands are indestructible, and the spell is dependent on the entity Sidorak, who has enormous magical power. And guess what? In the film, they look a hell of a lot like the way they do in the comics. In our number 4 spot, Vision's color. When Thanos removes the Mind Stone from Vision's forehead, all of the color in his body completely disappears, leaving him in shades of gray. This is a throwback to the story from the West Coast Avengers comic, when Vision was disassembled by their enemies back in West Coast Avengers Volume 2, Issue 44 from 1989. In the comics, the character is reassembled into a new Vision, with threatening powers. Looks like the MCU Vision wasn't allotted that same kind of fate. The character's death in the film also shares similarities to how Thanos kills him in the comics, with his fist ripping out a handful of wires. Up next, number 3, the White Wolf. Now, some of you may remember the post-credit scene from Black Panther that featured Shuri referencing Bucky Barnes as another white boy to fix. This scene hinted at the possibility that Bucky would return in Avengers Infinity War under the mantle of the White Wolf, a character who appears in T'Challa's world as an adopted brother who was exiled after constantly butting heads with T'Challa about how Wakanda should be reigned. Turns out that prediction was spot on, with Bucky being referred to as the White Wolf, and with a brand new vibranium arm. To what extent this reference may play out, who knows, but it seems unlikely that Bucky will share a similar arc with the original White Wolf. In our our number 2 spot, Morgan Stark. One of the smaller yet potent speculations for Iron Man's character was that with the return of Pepper Potts, the two may have a child. And hey, at least they have a discussion about it. In a scene where Doctor Strange, after Hulk's arrival, visits Iron Man to recruit him in the upcoming fight with Thanos, Tony is having a chat with Pepper about a vivid dream of his. In it, the two had a child, a son named after Pepper's uncle, Morgan. Now in the comics, Morgan is a real character, but instead of Pepper, he's related to Tony. He's a cousin who had a vendetta against him due to a belief that Howard Stark cheated his dad, Edward Stark, out of the family's fortune. And finally, in our number 1 spot, the final theme. At the end of the film, after the immensely impactful Thanos scene, music begins to play after a moment of silence. It's a much more morbid theme than we're used to with the MCU films. But there's something eerily familiar about it. Now if you listen closely, you'll realize that it's the same Avengers theme that we all know and love, but with a much more solemn take on it, by composer Alan Silvestri, which critics are now already hailing as one of the best pieces of music in the entire franchise. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these Easter eggs did you spot in the film? Are you excited for what all of this could mean for the 4th Avengers film and the subsequent MCU films? Let us know in those comments below. Now if you dug this video, please show us some love by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. And don't forget to check out the playlist that's currently flashing on your screen right now for more Infinity War and more Marvel goodness. In the meantime, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all in the next one.